Narayana namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet. So we're going to continue our discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto. And today's session, we're going to start afresh. We're going to start chapter 4. What is very interesting about the general delineation of chapters in the canto is that there is a description of the Lord and his activities, but with additional complexities as we go on. The functions are becoming greater and more complex with each chapter. So the first chapter of the second canto, that is when the conversation between Srila Sukadeva Goswami and Pariksit Maharaj begins in earnest. And during that conversation, we hear the praise of Pariksit Maharaj because he had asked questions that are of great consequence to the whole creation. So it is said that where Vaishnavas are present, the questions and the exchanges would benefit the whole creation. So whatever is being done by the Vaishnavas can have impact on the entire creation. It is not going to be limited to a specific area or a specific domicile, or it is not divided by what kind of a person we are, but it influences the entire creation. As a consequence, Sukadeva Goswami was very pleased because now that is the kind of question a sadhu would arise. Sadhu basically would want to think like Krishna. What is the definition of a sadhu? The definition of a sadhu as given by Srila Haridas Thakur in conversation with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Harinam Chintamani is that one who is completely dependent on Krishna is considered to be a sadhu. So one who is completely Krishna conscious is to be considered a sadhu. Now one who is Krishna conscious obviously would think in the manner in which it would please Krishna. As a consequence, the general thinking process of a Vaishnava is filled with extraordinary compassion, and it just does not limit itself with a surrounding which they recognize or people who wear the kind of clothes they wear or eat the kind of food they eat. It goes beyond all of this and it encompasses the whole of creation. As a consequence, Srila Sukadeva Goswami was very pleased because this is in line with the conversation that he wanted to have. Why? Because here was a very accomplished speaker with very deep realizations. He was liberated. He was already on the liberated platform. He did not have any roots on the planet. He was already liberated. And then such a speaker would also want to learn that he has an audience which is very qualified, because it takes two, as we say, that the speaker has to be qualified. The audience also has to be qualified for realizations to flow. And as a consequence, what is being seen here is that Sukadeva Goswami is very pleased in the beginning, in the first chapter, and there he begins delineations. And the first thing that he talks about is he talks about the worship of the Lord in the universal form, the Virat Rupa. The Virat Rupa is the time factor. This is being described in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He starts with the Virat Rupa, which encompasses the three different qualities of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, which is a part of the created universes, which is within this material universe. And he is talking about the Virat Rupa. And he talks about the Virat Rupa because you have to begin at a place where our consciousness rests. If we are materially motivated and our consciousness is material, then we have to be given a conception of the Lord, which also can be accessed and which can be related to by someone who is extraordinarily steeped in material energy. So what does it mean when we use the word materially motivated, materially situated? We use that word to indicate those who are completely forgotten. So if you have completely forgotten the relationship between ourselves and the Lord, then the beginning point, as given by Srila Sukadeva Goswami, is to meditate on the universal form of the Lord. This, of course, is not the recommendation of Srila Rupa Goswami for those of us who are coming in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Srila Sukadeva Goswami is starting from ground up. This is a ground up definition. He is starting from the zero, what we would call as the zero level, and then he is going higher and higher. At the zero level, he says that that's where you begin, and you need to begin there because you've forgotten your relationship. Then start observing the Virat Rupa, and by doing the observation of the Virat Rupa and meditating on the universal form of the Lord, one regains the memory of their relationship with Krishna. because the universal form of the Lord is all-encompassing and is a sum total of all the separated energies of the Lord, but in relationship to Krishna. So it's a representation of everything that is happening in the created universes, where you also have the mode of ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness represented by different deity forms of the Lord with different functions. So this is basically where Srila Sukadeva Goswami says one should begin. Now, in the subsequent chapter, we notice quite clearly that Lord Brahma, when he begins the process of creation, has forgotten his origin. He has also forgotten who he is. He has forgotten his duty. He has forgotten the prowess that is required and the knowledge that is required for us to be able to do our creation. Where does he begin? He is also being asked to begin with the universal form, the Virat Rupa of the Lord. This is basically understanding the function of the Lord as the maintainer, destroyer, and creator within the created universes. That's basically what it is, and understanding the function of time, or understanding Krishna's representation as Kala, the all-encompassing time, the great, I would say, controller, because everything is controlled by the time factor, everything. As a consequence, understanding the time factor is also an understanding of the Virat Rupa. There are so many different flavors to this. There are practically lineages and paramparas that are associated with it, but I can't share all of those because it is not relevant. But the point I'm just talking about is that that is the ground level. And one needs to begin at the ground level so that they could remember. And it is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam that you would remember this. And once you remember, the next level can be had. Because now the senses are awakening and the person is remembering, saying, this is my relationship, slowly, steadily. And then comes the second level. The second level, Srila Sukadeva Goswami talks about the meditation of the yogi. The yogi basically is meditating on the super soul. So he talks about the process of yoga and the clearing of the various psychic centers so that one could focus with concentration on the Lord in the heart and be able to advance. So this is basically a function of the next level. Once one remembers, then the next level is for him to be able to make an advancement into the area of yogic meditation in terms of the practice of yoga and the practice of basically Ashtanga yoga, etc. So there's a big description in the second chapter of Ashtanga yoga and its various ways in which to clear the material desires that are present in the psychic centers and to be able to make advancement so that one could concentrate in the heart. Then subsequently, we see an improvement or a greater level of the detail emerge, and that particularly focuses on the position of devotional service. Basically talking about devotional service as the superior process, and also talking about how to define ourselves in terms of where we are. So they talk about sarvakama, they talk about moksha kama, and they talk about nishkama. Sarvakama is the materialist. He desires or she desires everything. And as a consequence, Srila Sukadeva Goswami is saying, even if you desire everything, worship Krishna and engage in devotional service. The challenge to this was described in previous sessions. The challenge is when a materialist is worshiping the Lord, the objective of attaining something becomes even bigger than the Lord himself. So they will do a puja, they would do a fire sacrifice, they would do all kinds of wonderful things. But then all of that is secondary. It's a means to an end, because the end itself is their goal, but the process of worshiping the Lord is the means to an end. So this is sarvakama. This is rejected by Srila Rupa Goswami. He says, Anya Vilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavratam. Then comes the second category of moksha kama. Moksha kama is an improvement over sarva kama. Moksha kama is the soul who practically feels that whatever is being attained here in this material world is simply a waste of time. So this is someone who has realized the futility and the extraordinarily wasteful nature of activity in this planet. And as a consequence, they focus on getting out, because time is limited once you come into the planet. There are a certain number of years for preparation, there are a certain number of years for focus, and then there is a point where you have to be able to take off. Because time is so limited and it is so curtailed, one can't expect to achieve everything in a focused manner. As a consequence, the moksha karma personalities, they don't waste their time. They are gyanis. They have attained a certain level of expertise where they have figured out that nothing is to be attained within the created material universes because it's a waste of time. I would not gain much, so I must get out. So this is a much better objective than the person who wants to achieve things within this world. Now, the Jnani, the Mokshakami, is also worshipping or encouraged to worship Krishna by Sukadeva Goswami. He says, even if you are desiring moksha, even if you are a Jnani, worship Krishna. And there are many. Their objective is not so much to serve the Lord. Their objective is to get out. Yeah, this is the distinction. That's why Srila Rupa Goswami is stressing Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. Jnana is simply a state where one recognizes that material endeavor for the sake of fulfilling fruitive desires is simply a path which is going to result in frustration. This conclusion is being reached. As a consequence, they reject such endeavor. Now comes the next level, which is akama. Akama is one who is basically tolerating the circumstances of life, engaging in duties, and offering all the results to Krishna. So he is not sarvakama, he is not mokshakama, he is basically tolerating the circumstances of life and then engaging in the service of the Lord and offering all the results of his work to Krishna. This is a definition which fits in with what Mahaprabhu has also given us. This is basically a definition which closely resembles Trinadapi Sunichena Tarori Vasahishnuna. So you tolerate the circumstances of life. So you're not desiring moksha, you tolerate the circumstances of life. You don't desire out of here. You tolerate the circumstances of life. You also accept the circumstances of life as being given by Krishna. This is humility. When one accepts whatever circumstances are being arranged by the Lord, tolerates the circumstances of life, and then engages in the process of offering all the results of his work to Krishna, and at the same time engages in pure devotional service, then such is the process of the pure devotee. So the whole definition of Srila Rupa Goswami's Anyabhilashita Shunyam comes from the discussions that occur in the very early part of Srimad Bhagavatam. Because if you don't set your goals right, then we could be very misled, because this is a lifetime process. Imagine wanting something or desiring something which is not so much in line with what Srimad Bhagavatam wants us to do. Imagine desiring a certain aspect of our existence which does not receive the approval of the parampara. What do we have if we don't have either of these? If we don't have approval of the parampara, we don't have approval of scripture, where is our goal? Where are we heading? So one needs to be very careful. So right at the outset, there are descriptions being given very clearly of different types of arrangements and different types of goals and the compromises which are being made. The karmi is encouraged to worship Krishna, but the karmi does not consider Krishna as important. He considers his desires as being important. Krishna is a means to an end. The jnani does not consider Krishna to be important. He worships Krishna, but he considers Krishna as a means to an end because he wants out. It is the bhakta who considers Krishna as being important and doesn't really care about whether his desires are fulfilled or whether he is out of this universe. So this is the process. Akama is the process that is being encouraged by Sukadeva Goswami and our acharyas, where we tolerate the circumstances of life, we engage in bhakti yoga, and we also give the results of our work to Krishna. So particularly what is being encouraged is a situation where there's anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam. Anukulena Krishna anushilanam bhakti uttama. This is anukula, which is you have to be favorably disposed towards Krishna. Being favorably disposed essentially means our acharyas have given a very, very specific commentary on this. Favorably disposed means following in the footsteps of Srimati Radharani. That is favorably disposed. Favorably disposed towards Krishna's service means following in the footsteps of Srimati Radharani. Following in the footsteps of the servants of Srimati Radharani. Following in the footsteps of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. This is anukula. Yeah, this is the most primary qualification, most important qualification for us, because you could follow anybody, but if you're not following the certain the principles that are followed by the followers of Lord Chaitanya, then we are not quite fitting into the definition of what we ought to be doing per the Guru Varga, the Acharya Varga, whom we are associated with. So that is where this Anukula and Pratikula come from. Anukula and Pratikula is not someone who simply likes Krishna and hates Krishna. A karmi will like Krishna. He will like Krishna because Krishna is giving. A jnani will like Krishna's worship because he's being freed from the pressures of the material environment. This is Anukula? No, it is not. So our acharyas are very clear. You want to learn Anukula, you have to study Srimati Radharani's mood, which essentially means we have to follow in the footsteps of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have to follow in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya. This is Anukula, because for us, Anukula is not simply a favorable attitude towards someone who is throwing a few breadcrumbs or to someone who is taking us out of trouble. That in itself is a disqualification from this whole definition of Anukula and Pratikula. So we have to be very careful in defining our goal. We also have to be very careful in understanding what is expected of our Acharya Varga. Because when you are following a subtle process, spirituality is subtle. When you're following a subtle process, there's a need for great care. It is not so much that the road is painted, there's a blue and a red, and then you're walking in the middle and you know exactly where you're going. It is not that easy. The only way you get to where you're going is to be strict and chaste to the Guru Parampara. Being chaste to the Guru Parampara essentially means that you have to understand what they're trying to say. When they say Anukula, they're not talking about, the attitude of favorable versus unfavorable as you would look at it from different angles. They are talking about someone who is going to follow in the footsteps of a Vrajavasi. They're talking about someone who is going to follow in the footsteps of Mahaprabhu. This is very important for us to remember, that there's a big difference when we are reading things and then someone else is telling us what to do. Be very careful about it, because definition of worship is seen in so many places in India, but then it is not quite the same. We have seen here, that could be worship for the purpose of Sarvakama, that could be worship for the purpose of Mokshakama, that could be worship for the purpose of pleasing the divine couple. Ours falls in the last category. So this caution is being brought forth so early in the game. So early in the second canto, in the first few chapters, the whole definition of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta is being exemplified and brought forth, which is quite remarkable, very early. Now, what we are looking at in the fourth chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, is we are looking at a further level of complexity in understanding the Lord's functions. So we looked at the universal form that makes the whole idea of God as a controller, destroyer, maintainer more evident, more visible. And then we looked at the meditation of the super soul as a yogi. Now we also looked at what is favorable and unfavorable in terms of approach. Now we want to look at the personal forms of the Lord, because Srila Sukadeva Goswami in the third chapter is talking about devotional service. Then devotional service to whom? We need to understand the personal forms of the Lord. We need to understand what lies beyond. So then he is talking about the Lord as the Purusha Avataras, the Lord who descends to maintain, create, and destroy these universes, the Purusha Avataras. So that is where the fourth chapter is focused on. The fourth chapter is all about learning about the process of creation and how this whole situation works through. So let's go through a few verses of the fourth chapter. So to some extent, I have a short window today, so I may not extend the class beyond another half hour or so. So I would go through these verses, and then I'll probably allocate 10 minutes for questions, and then we'll meet again the subsequent week. So chapter 4 is the process of creation. Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Pariksit, the son of Uttara, after hearing the speeches of Sukadeva Goswami, which were all about the truth of the self, applied his concentration faithfully upon Lord Krishna. Maharaj Pariksit, as a result of his wholehearted attraction for Lord Krishna, was able to give up all deep-rooted affection for his personal body, his wife, his children, his palace, his animals like horses and elephants, his treasury house, his friends and relatives, and his undisputed kingdom. So, as a result of wholehearted attraction for Lord Krishna, was able to give up deep-rooted affection for his personal body. So, at this particular time, he was able to give up because in Bhagavatam they use the word Dehatma Buddhi. So, they are basically giving up the illusory attachment because he is now firmly situated in his eternal relationship. Attraction the attraction from Lord Krishna means he is firmly situated in his eternal relationship. He is slowly, steadily getting oriented towards serving the Lord in his eternal relationship. As a result of wholehearted attraction for Lord Krishna, was able to give up all deep-rooted affection for his personal body, his wife, his children, his palace, his animals like horses and elephants, his treasury house, his friends and relatives, and his undisputed kingdom. So this is where he says Maharaj Pariksit is on the liberated platform. He is basically following the principle of being able to give up the lower for the higher. So he has found very deep attraction for the Lord. Now, how does Krishna attract us in this lifetime? Krishna attracts us in this lifetime through the Guru. He attracts us through Krishna's names, Kirtan. Krishna attracts through Guru. He is attracting us through Kirtan. This wholehearted attraction of the Lord through Guru and Kirtan allows the soul to be freed from unwanted attachments that come from the body. Yeah, there's a big distinction between attachment and affection. Giving up attachment means being freed from the mode of passion and ignorance. Giving up attachment means being freed from the mode of passion and ignorance. It does not mean we become insensitive. It does not mean they become careless and become completely, I would say, cold towards relationships. It simply means that they are not operating in passion ignorance. We should understand it from our fundamental definition of consciousness. Fundamental definition of consciousness is consciousness stays in passion, there's ignorance, and there's goodness. If one is in passion, one is in ignorance, there would be attachment. There'll be deep attachment. And because of this deep attachment, there would be great difficulty in keeping life as Krishna-centered. It is very difficult. But then Krishna slowly comes in, and then Guru comes because Guru attracts us to Krishna. Or rather, Krishna sends the Guru and attracts us to him. Then Krishna's Naam attracts us. As a consequence, what happens here is that as the devotee's consciousness is elevated from passion and ignorance, and he becomes free from the lower modes of nature, then the attachment to the body and its extensions becomes complete. Detachment becomes complete. The attachment ends. And as a consequence, the person now is situated is in far greater peaceful mental and physical stature, because now he is not in this agitated mode of passion, agitated mode, or very down mode of ignorance. So do we understand the distinction? When they use the word saying he is being able to give up the attachment to his family, it does not mean some kind of a cold-hearted move where one wakes up and says, I do not have anything to do with these people because I don't care. That's not what this is, because it comes across as that. Sometimes it comes across as if there's going to be neglect. It is not true. In fact, it is the other way around. This is basically a definition where it is being said clearly that the devotee, which is Maharaj Pariksit, has freed himself from the lower modes. Because he has freed himself from the lower modes, he is no longer situated in the so-called attachment and aversion. He does not have attachment, he doesn't have aversion. So that is how we need to understand this very carefully. So we do not want to understand this in a very mundane fashion as forgetting this and being detached means that, neglectful. We kind of tend to translate this, but it is not the truth. The truth is that basically one becomes free from passion and ignorance, and as a consequence, they are not bewildered by changes that occur in these extensions to the body. They're not bewildered by it. They continue on in the path, they tolerate the circumstances, and continue on the path, and they make advancement in spiritual science. O great sages, the great soul Maharaj Pariksit, constantly wrapped in thought of Lord Krishna, knowing well of his imminent death, renounced all sorts of fruitive activities, namely acts of religion, economic development, and sense gratification, and thus fixed himself firmly in his natural love for Krishna, and asked all these questions exactly as you're asking me. So constantly wrapped in thought of Lord Krishna. How could someone be constantly wrapped in thought of Lord Krishna? Can someone be constantly thinking about Krishna when there's passion in the body? No. When passion exists in the consciousness and when we are situated in the mode of passion, then one really can't be constantly thinking of anything. One can't be constantly thinking of anything for more than 20 minutes. Have you seen restless people? We notice this in children. We also notice it in adults. We notice it in ourselves when we sit down to chant. Have you noticed the restlessness that comes in the 15th to the 20th minute? And then we need to get up and walk. We can't really sit and chant. This is nothing but passion. So being wrapped in attention, wrapped in thought of Lord Krishna, is to be freed from the lower modes whilst developing a deeper understanding of the relationship. Sambandha Gyan is increasing. Krishna Sambandha increases. The devotee is falling more and more in love with Krishna. Because they are falling more and more in love with Krishna, being freed from this influence of the lower modes, they're able to have rapt attention. And in such a situation, knowing well of his imminent death, he renounces all sorts of fruitive activities, acts of religion, economic development, sense gratification, thus fixed himself firmly in his natural love for Krishna and asked all these questions exactly as you're asking me. So, quite obviously, Shri Pariksit Maharaj had the good fortune of knowing that he was going to leave in a week's time. He knew he was going to leave his body in a week's time. And as a consequence, he renounced all the minor activities of Upadharma, Chaladharma. He said, okay, I can't really get involved. I cannot get involved in any of this because it doesn't matter. I'm leaving in a week's time. I need to focus on the most important fact of life. But we don't have that luxury. We don't have the luxury of knowing when we are going to go. All we know is we are going to go. That's for sure. All we know is we are going to go. When is not known. As a consequence, planning for an event which we do not even know about is very difficult. That is a struggle of human existence. We spoke about it in previous classes. A good student who works every day is able to take the weekly, quarterly, semi-annual, and annual exams. They are able to take those exams. They are not in fear. A good student is eager to make a transition. A poor student, on the other hand, does not want to take any exam because they are somewhat of some level of clarity that they're going to fail. They're not prepared. So our business is not so much knowing when we are going to leave. Our business is to ensure that each and every day spent on the planet is done in preparing and doing the activities that are required well. So being a good student in our understanding means we follow the instructions of the spiritual master quite diligently. Waking up each day, we take each day as being the last and we give it our life's worth. This is basically the attitude of many advanced souls. They tend to operate at a consciousness where they think that this is the end. This is exactly what I must do, and they prioritize life in a different way. They have a sense of not wanting to waste time. Okay? There are a few verses that are being given here. And those verses basically in this particular purport, especially of Sri Madhavendra Puri, I'm going to read the translation. O my evening prayer, all good unto you. O my morning bath, I bid you goodbye. O demigods and forefathers, please excuse me. I'm unable to perform any more offerings for your pleasure. Now I've decided to free myself from all reactions to sins simply by remembering anywhere and everywhere the great descendant of Yadu. There's some static coming in. So now I've decided to free myself from all reactions to sin simply by remembering anywhere and everywhere the great descendant of Yadu and the great enemy of Kamsa, Lord Krishna. I think this is sufficient for me. What is the use of further endeavors? So this doesn't mean that he's not having a bath. Okay? This doesn't mean Madhavendra Puri, who is the spiritual master of the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. He is the spiritual master of Lord Nityananda. So basically, he is not making a statement saying, he's not making a statement saying that basically, I wouldn't want to have a bath, etc. That's not what is being said here. He's basically saying that I'm not going to be ritualistic in thinking that I could do something which is so wonderful that it could get me the attention and the service of Krishna. This is a very powerful statement. what is being said here by Srila Madhavendra Puri is that what is being given in Mahaprabhu's line, in the line of Mahaprabhu, what is being given by Sriman Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Ram through the process of Bhakti Yoga in our parampara is so special that there's really nothing that we could do that could qualify us for what is being given. One can't claim that they are following all the rituals very strictly, so they deserve to be given Harinam. They can't claim that they come from a certain lineage where the forefathers were worshipped wonderfully. They cannot make a claim that demigods were extraordinarily well worshipped because they were indebted to the demigods, and as they were indebted to the forefathers. They've done all they're supposed to do in the form of duty on this planet and make a claim they can receive what is to be given by Lord Chaitanya. So this is basically also giving us a corollary to operate on, saying that you can't really do anything in this world to qualify for what's being given. In fact, in most cases, in practically every case, none of us are ever qualified to receive what we have received from Lord Chaitanya. None of us are qualified. So this is basically isolating the fact that we are completely dependent on Krishna. That is where he is talking about. He's basically saying that I have desired to free myself from all reactions to sins simply by remembering anywhere and everywhere the great descendant of Yadu. So they are emphasizing very clearly that the process of remembering Krishna through the process of devotional service is the only means. He just wants to focus 100%. Everything else that is going to aid it is fine, but he is not dependent on any of it, so he's going to stop everything. He's going to focus only on remembering Krishna. So this is basically the other fact which is also being mentioned here. He is basically saying that doing the duties of this world and then basically doing what one would consider as being ritualistically purification, activities of ritual purification, including purification that is done, in the 3 times of the, I would say, the day. All of these have no consequence because none of this is ultimately going to assist. What we are going to assisted by, what we are going to be assisted by is the remembrance of the Lord. Essentially, whatever helps us remember Krishna is what is going to assist us. So here there's again a focus on the mercy that's being received rather than the effort that we can put in. Because there are people who might think that there are certain things in life that are very important in relation. No, Madhavendra Puri is saying, no, reject everything. Reject everything because none of this is going to help. And he's not doing it at a time where he's not doing it out of, I would say, a lack of humility. He's very humbly saying, none of this is going to help. I need to just use my time. So he's basically removing all the clutter, throwing everything away. I need to use my time in singularly remembering Krishna. That is what he's being emphasized here. So Pariksit Maharaj is doing the same. He says, I don't have any time for anything else. I need to focus on Krishna because now I know I'm going to leave. Right? So now we have the other. Yeah, Prahlad Maharaj also says this. He says, religion, economic development, and sense gratification are celebrated as 3 means of attaining the path of salvation. Of these, Ikshatrayi, especially knowledge of the self, knowledge of fruitive acts and logic, and also politics and economics are different means of livelihood. All these are different subjects of Vedic education, and therefore I consider them temporary engagements. They are practically rejecting whatever is going to give them the so-called advancement in material science within this particular material created universes, or rejecting what would give them a sense of leaving the material universes. They are not interested in leaving the material universe, neither are they interested in goals within the material universe. This again fits in with Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi and Avrita. They are interested in what is going to allow them to be able to remember the Lord. Because ultimately, the final test of transition is to be able to remember Krishna. If there's daily practice, then the daily practice is going to allow us to take the final transition quite well. We're going to receive the help of daily practice and we're going to receive mercy because you've done our part. The transition is a matter of being able to do the daily practice. And it's a fact. Those who are very well prepared, they prepare for the transition because it's an exciting time. It's graduation day. No one wants to fail and remain in the same classroom. They want to graduate from one classroom to the other. And as a consequence, as good students, they want to apply themselves fully on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, quarterly, semi-annually and annually, so that they could ultimately prepare themselves for the transition. But here, they're basically saying, you can't do everything and also prepare for the transition. You need to be very singularly focused on what is most important as a goal. So internally, we have to be very focused on the goal. We spoke about it initially, about being a karma. Internally, be very focused on the goal. Be very focused on the goal. Understand what the goals are. Everything else is needed to be done as a matter of accepting the arrangements of the Lord and acting out with courage with whatever is being given so that we could move forward. Maharaj Pariksit said, "O learned Brahmana, you know everything because you are without material contamination. Therefore, whatever you have spoken to me appears perfectly right. Your speeches are gradually destroying the darkness of my ignorance, for you are narrating the topics of the Lord. I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods." So we spoke about the universal form, we spoke about the Lord in the heart, then we spoke about devotional service. Now we are talking about the different personal arrangements and personal forms of the Lord. The personal forms of the Lord, which are going to be spoken about and addressed here, are the Purusha avatars. You have Karanodakashayi Vishnu, then you have Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and you have Shirodakashayi Vishnu. Mahasankarshana, he expands into Karanodakashayi Vishnu. Karanodakashayi Vishnu, he is the Vishnu who lies on the causal ocean. As he breathes in, the universes end their existence. As he breathes out, the universes come into being. So his breathing in and breathing out is considered to be the lifespan of Lord Brahma in the different universes that get in and out. Now, Karanodakashayi Vishnu, as he breathes out, universes come out. When the material universes are manifest, there is a need for maintaining the material universe. So Karanodakashayi Vishnu expands and enters into this universe as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Once he expands and enters into this universe as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, then there are living entities. Then he also expands into Shirodakashayi Vishnu to basically maintain each and every living entity, the super soul. So these are three different Purusha avatars who are engaging in the process of maintenance, destruction, and creation. These are Purusha avatars who are also worshipped. If you go to South India, you will find the Ranganath Temple in Sri Rangam. You have the Lord lying on Anantasesha, and you have the, the lotus coming from his navel, which supports Lord Brahma. Mother Lakshmi is at his lotus feet. This is the picture of Karanodakashayi. This is the picture of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. We also see the picture of Shirodakashayi Vishnu in terms of deities that are worshipped in different forms around the South Indian temples. Because South India, in general, they worship Lord Narayan, they worship the Vishnu Tattva deities, they worship the Purusha avatars. So here we are starting with the Purusha avatars after concluding a little bit of discussion on worship of the universal form, worship of the Lord in the heart. Now we are getting into personal worship of the Lord. Now we are getting into the personal worship of the Lord. As a consequence, the fourth chapter basically is the beginning of descriptions of the expansions of the Lord. The fourth chapter is the beginning of the descriptions of the expansions of the Lord, where he appears as Karanodakashayi Vishnu, Shirodakashayi Vishnu, and Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, maintaining the universes, maintaining the individual souls, etc. So I'm going to stop here because I'm a little bit short of time today. I will take questions for the next 10-15 minutes, and then we will end today's session. We will continue in the subsequent session with greater detail on the Purusha avatars. So to quickly summarize, we spoke about the place of the fourth chapter. The fourth chapter comes right at the onset of discussions on engaging in pure devotional service. The previous chapter delineates different types of karma and establishes the fact that Krishna should be approached for everything. The subsequent chapter, we're talking about the personal form of the Lord, which is the fourth chapter. In the personal form of the Lord, now we are talking about the Purusha avatars, which are the avatars of the Lord who are directly involved with the creation, maintenance, and destruction in the universes. So this is the beginning of understanding Krishna's expansions, but this is also the beginning of pure devotional service in terms of understanding how you could engage in pure devotional service to the different forms of the Lord. So this is the beginning, one would say. This is the ground level of understanding the personal form of the Lord, of engaging in pure devotional service. So we'll stop here and then we'll take some questions. As we wait for questions, I was just wanting to make a mention about the more important points that were mentioned here had to do with the fact that Pariksit Maharaj basically had reached a point of becoming free from the influence of body. Becoming free from the influence of the body essentially means being free from the influence of the lower modes of nature. So when we do describe the fact about being attached and detached in this world, we are talking about being in the mode of passion versus being in the mode of goodness. Predominated by goodness means they are not attached. Predominated by passion means they are agitated by their attachments. So that distinction is being brought in here. There's also a distinction being made here in terms of setting goals. Srila Madhavendra Puri is being quoted in that particular verse, in the purport by Srila Prabhupada. And in that particular verse, in the purport, he is quoting Srila Madhavendra Puri as rejecting all forms of Vedic purification, because he basically is rejecting it as not so much a matter of being completely useless. He simply says that given the fact that now I want to be completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, I just don't have the objective of purification. I have the objective of service. I have the objective of being able to offer direct service to the Lord. I just want to be able to remember Govinda. He will do everything. As a consequence, now it is being said, I want to give up the daily rituals of Sandhya Vandanam. This is a distinction from the 3 Gayatris that we do in second initiation. Please don't mix up Sandhya Vandanam with what we do. It's very different. Sandhya Vandanam is a purificatory rite that allows the initiates to move from the lower modes of nature to the mode of goodness. The Gayatri that we have been given has the ability to give us a deeper understanding of Sambandha with Krishna. That is very different from what is being given here in the Vedic system of initiation, where they initiate you with the Brahma Gayatri. They give you a process where you can learn what to do and what not to do and then move ahead through performing Sandhya Vandanam. Daily ritual of Sandhya Vandanam is basically required to purify oneself from the lower modes of nature. What do we do to purify ourselves from the lower modes of nature? We chant Harinam, we follow the rules and regulations given in the process of devotional service. We come in touch with service to the deity. We come in touch with service to Srimad Bhagavatam by hearing. We come in touch with service to the movement of Lord Chaitanya by direct service. These are our processes where we directly come in touch with purification. That is the reason why Madhavendra Puri is rejecting it. Okay? So he's basically saying, I don't have any obligation or duties in this world which would eventually allow me to make progress in ever evolving from one level of consciousness to the other. I don't have time for any of this. I'm not interested in a higher station in life. I want to serve, and I want to use 100% of my time in serving. I want to remember Govinda. So that's the focus which is being brought forth here. So that is being highlighted in terms of differentiating activities that are being done for the purpose of purification versus the activities that are being done with direct service. Our purification occurs due to direct service. We don't do anything for the purpose of purification. We serve and we become purified. We call upon Nam, we become purified. We come in touch with the deity of Krishna, we become purified so that we could understand our Sambandha. Our objective is not purification. Our objective is to understand Sambandha. As a consequence, we serve and we understand Sambandha, and as a consequence, there's purification. So our purificatory process is a means to an end. Krishna is the goal. Service to Krishna and relationship to Krishna is the goal. So there's a distinction that is being made here in terms of the various Vedic processes of purification, rituals which are required on a daily basis so that one could remain free from the modes of ignorance and passion, versus what we do. What we do is directly coming in touch with Krishna through different ways, and Krishna purifies us. This is exactly what we do. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and see what questions you have, and then we'll continue further. Okay, I have a question here. Basically, the question is, could you explain the difference between attachment and affection? Attachment and affection essentially means that affection is in the mode of goodness, attachment is in the mode of passion. Attachment essentially means that we are focused 100% on what is going to come back to us after we give. That's attachment. If one is attached to friends and family, there's always a focus on how they're going to reciprocate. This is more of passion. There's a focus on how they're going to reciprocate. I did this. How are they going to reciprocate? This is more of passion. Affection, on the other hand, is in the mode of goodness. You focus on duty. You don't so much look at what's coming back. You instead look and see what is it that you need to do, because that's a duty. You tolerate the circumstances of ungrateful relatives. You tolerate the circumstances of ungrateful neighbors whatsoever. You tolerate all the circumstances where it is not coming back in the proportion that you are giving, but you do your duty, and that is basically what is called affection, and that is also basically in the mode of goodness. There is no attachment to results. That's the difference. Giving up, the second question, giving up religious ritualistic activities. I'm very junior in the Krishna conscious journey. Is this applicable to me as well? The process of purification by family tradition, it can be continued if it is helping someone serve better. We are not against it. So if you are doing the Sandhya Vandanam process of chanting the Gayatri and doing the Sandhya Vandanam based on family tradition, what has been coming to you through family tradition, there is nothing wrong with it. You can continue with it, but one needs to understand what it can do for you. What it can do for you is to purify your senses and bring you to the platform of goodness. But if you get an opportunity to engage in service to the Lord, and service can be book distribution, service can be cleaning the pots in the temple, service can be cleaning up the temple, service could be preaching, everything is service. And what I'm trying to say is coming in touch with service is far, far more purifying than if you were to engage in the objective of a specific ritual, which is purifying. But if it is helping you, there is no need to stop it. We are not against the fact we are not saying that, one should give it up. We are not saying that. All we are saying is understand the distinction. There's a distinction between what we are trying to accomplish versus what is possible. What we are trying to accomplish is to be able to develop Krishna Sambandha. For that journey, the ingredients have already been presented to us. This is a downward or descending process. You come to it and you go to a temple, you go to a Rath Yatra, you hold on to the ropes of Jagannath's cart, you immediately become purified in so many different ways because Sambandha starts. This is very, this is a very, I would say, powerful way to understand Krishna consciousness and what happens with Krishna consciousness. I have seen it. People who have had absolutely no connection to Krishna consciousness, they can come and they'll hold on to Jagannath's cart, and you will find them attending weekly programs after that because Jagannath pulls them in. They try to pull Jagannath, Jagannath pulls them in. So this is very powerful because now this is a downward descending process where mercy is being thrown at us. We just have to position ourselves for mercy. The process of purification otherwise, given in the Vedas, is an ascending process where you have to put in efforts to purify yourself. I hope that is understood. So what is more productive is to position ourselves for mercy, and doing so would automatically allow us to move forward. Does this minimize the purificatory aspects of the Vedas? No. When you engage in Brahmanical work, there are a lot of things that we do. Doing the archaman, wearing tilak, there's a whole big process there which brings us very, very close to the mode of goodness quite automatically. But it is all done with the objective of service. As a consequence, it has great power. That's the distinction I want to make. Yeah. Okay, one more question. Satyaloka of Lord Brahma, does it get destroyed at the time of destruction? No. Not in the time of daily destruction. It does get destroyed at some point. what should be the attitude of the second initiated devotees while doing Gayatri in comparison to the Sandhya Vandanam? Is doing Gayatri less important compared to chanting Mahamantra when we have situation of limited time? Okay, I want to be very clear. The Gayatri mantras that are being given to us facilitate Sambandha Gyan. We should write it down. They facilitate Sambandha Gyan. Does the Gayatri replace Mahamantra? No. Do we need the second initiation to go back to Godhead? No. So what we are trying to say here is Mahamantra is self-sufficient because it is Krishna himself. The Gayatri mantra allows us to develop deeper Sambandha Gyan. As a consequence, we end up serving Krishna with greater level of fervor and attraction. So that's what is required. So one doesn't replace the other. If you are second initiated, you need to do both. Yeah, we shouldn't really say that one is less important or more important. If you have taken initiation, doing it is important because this is a connection and basically, I would say it is basically a situation where we are receiving it from Guru, and it deepens the ties to the Guru when we follow what is being given by him with care. So one cannot replace the other. That's the answer. But Mahamantra is sufficient to take us back to Godhead. Now, one moment. Where does the transcendental mode which we hear of fit in? Would Maharaj Pariksit be above the modes? Generally hear of in classes above the three modes is transcendental mode. The transcendental mode is exactly that, being transcendental to the modes of nature. Yeah, there are two ways to look at it. One transcends the modes of nature and serves Krishna. The modes of nature are not very conducive for serving Krishna. So an example would be someone has a fever, but then they've been asked to come to the temple and serve. Now they overcome the issue of the fever because they find that there is no one else to replace them in the temple, and somehow or the other they land up for service. They struggle through service, and then at the end of service, they realize a certain strange, wonderful sense of satisfaction because they have transcended the modes of nature, their conditioning, and they are engaged in the service of the Lord. They experience what it is to go above the influence of the body. But this can't be maintained at all times. So one can transcend when the opportunities arise. When challenges arrive in life, one transcends those challenges and continues serving. But ultimately, there'll be a time when we would be completely free from the influence of the modes of nature. This is a matter of sadhana. This is a matter of evolution in the sadhana practice, going from bhajana kriya anartha nivritti. Anartha nivritti is to give up all the aspects of consciousness which are interfering with our progress, and eventually we get fixed, which is nishtha. So slowly, steadily, we make a lot of advancement. This is a very, very clear milestone that is to be achieved, to be freed from the influence of passion and ignorance, and to be predominated in the mode of goodness, and ultimately also to be away, kind of being completely free from the influence of the modes. So this is a matter of evolution. This is exactly what every one of us should be going through as we sincerely chant Nam and engage in service. It's an evolutionary process. So that's the difference. The modes of nature versus trying to sometimes overcome the modes of nature, but acting out, bringing the soul to the forefront. And times when we have already reached a point where there is no going back. We're already situated in the higher mode of nature. As a consequence, there is no interference from passion and ignorance. Will Maharaj Pariksit be above the modes? The answer is yes. Maharaj Pariksit was above the modes because he was already in that particular circumstance. One moment. Let me just read through the other questions. There are a lot of questions that are coming through here. The goal is very clear for us, but not being able to engage every hour towards the goal frustrates us. How can we channel our life energy properly at our stage when we have so many different objectives in life. I guess there is a need for us to do whatever we need to do in life as of today, to the point where it doesn't interfere with us being able to give a lot more to Krishna. But ultimately, the frustration of not being able to do more for Krishna is a healthy frustration, because that should be our desire for the future. As we desire the future of not being encumbered by what we are being encumbered today, then a future like that will happen as well. It's a matter of desiring. You see, the unfortunate part is that 20 years, 30 years back, none of us, or most of us, were not really thinking about the challenges of Krishna consciousness. We were desiring things in life. That's what we were doing. So today, life is something where we have desired our way into. 20, 30 years back, we have somehow or the other gotten into different arrangements of life. And as a consequence, what we are today is nothing but a reflection of the desires of the past. But becoming frustrated with the present because it's not offering opportunity and interfering with Krishna consciousness is healthy. Because as we get frustrated with the present and start desiring a future where there is this whole, I would say, burden is being lifted so that we could do more, Krishna will arrange a lifestyle and will arrange a future where we could do more. One moment. We take examples of devotees who have been blessed with most of the materialistic needs. Are there examples where devotees, without such continued bhakti, being with family and balancing family? That's practically everyone. Yeah. There is no one, I think, who is, I wouldn't say no one. For most people, in their minds, their needs have not been met. This is an honest statement. For most people, in their own minds, it doesn't mean it's reality. It could be far from reality. For most people, in their own minds, their needs have not been met. They're still aspiring for different things in life. So that's most people in that sense. So everybody is struggling with unwanted desires, and that is anartha nivritti. That anartha nivritti process needs to happen where they remove all the clutter from the table and start focusing on the real deal. So how can Lord Brahma forget? Yes, if you come in touch with material energy, one can forget. Jaya and Vijaya forgot. They forgot their service. They forgot their connection with Krishna. So yes, coming in touch with material energy, one can forget. This is the crux of the Bhagavad Gita, 15:15. He says that I will help you forget and I'll help you remember. You're forgetting because you're desiring other things. If you want to desire me, then I will help you remember. So anybody can forget. Krishna will help us forget. He will also help us remember. Okay, so okay, is there any other question or comment? I'm not sure if I've left anything out because the chat moved quite fast, so I was trying my best to answer. Is there any other question or comment that one would like to share or speak of?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
On setting up the goals right in the beginning. So, for example, if you not set up your goals in the beginning, but later.
Can you speak a little bit more closer? Maybe your mic is a little bit away from you.
Can you hear now?
No, it's actually become more distant.
Oh, okay. Is it clear now, Prabhu?
Yeah. Let us try. Let me try. Mm-hmm.
Setting up the goals right in the beginning.
I can't hear you, Partha Prabhu. It's really become very, yeah. Can you speak again?
Can you hear now?
Yeah, perfect. Go on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Setting up the goals right in the beginning. For example, Prabhu, if you are not able to set the goals.
You're going again, Prabhu. Yeah, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Prabhu.
Yeah.
I'll ask you in the chat, Prabhu, otherwise.
Yeah, please do. That will help. So there's one question here. How can one know that one is situated in the mode of goodness all the time? How can one know that one is situated in the mode of goodness all the time? We will know, especially if you're chanting Harinam and we are in the mode of goodness with no interference from, or very little interference from passion and ignorance, we would be able to focus, and most of the chanting session would be very fruitful in us being able to concentrate on Nam, concentrate on the activities that we do. So that is one. There would be a general sense of deep satisfaction, very deep satisfaction. There would also be, to a large extent, disaffection from things which normally would affect others. That's why the Brahmanas have capacity for tolerance to perform austerities. Why do we say Brahmanas can perform austerities? Brahmanas can perform austerities because they are in the mode of goodness. They don't get very influenced by either passion or ignorance, which agitates their mind. They are not very attached to certain outcomes where they get very agitated either. So Brahmanas can perform austerities. They thrive in circumstances where things are very uncertain or there is very little available. It's quite austere. And if someone really thrives and does well in such circumstances, then one is supposed to be Brahminical because they are in the mode of goodness. They can thrive in such circumstances. Eating less, having very little, great uncertainty about the future. Normally, it would cause great anxiety and worry and madness. But nothing would happen if someone is very firmly situated in the higher modes of goodness, because it doesn't affect them at all. So you can recognize that by different circumstances and propensities as well. Yes, Partha, I'm sorry if I cut you off. Haribol, was anybody speaking? I'm sorry.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, it is written in here that in the planet of Satyaloka, there is neither bereavement, nor old age, nor death. So,
Yes.
can you please,
Yes.
how can you know that? It is material, part of material world, right?
It is a part of the material world, but just understand that in one day of Lord Brahma, one day, there are 1,000 yuga cycles that we go through. So 1,000 Kali Yugas, 1,000 Satya Yugas, 1,000 Treta, and 1,000 Dwapara Yugas. One day of Lord Brahma. And during his night, all the planets below Maharloka, they get destroyed. All the residents of Maharloka, they go to Satyaloka and higher planets. The point we are trying to talk about is the time scale we are talking about, even of one day of Lord Brahma, involves thousands and thousands of yuga cycles, trillions of years. So imagine an entire lifetime of Lord Brahma, which is 100 plus years of such days. Then you can imagine what that is. It is almost eternal. It's almost eternity. So that's what is being described there from the position of understanding. But even that gets destroyed at some point in time. But all the residents of Satyaloka, they don't die as in giving up material bodies. They leave the Satyaloka planet and they go higher to the spiritual sky based on their desires. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure. This is the last question I'm going to take. I'm going to take two questions that are on chat because I need to go today. Is mode of goodness means that we don't get upset even when things go wrong in our services? If yes, then would it not affect our enthusiasm? Mode of goodness doesn't quite mean that we don't get upset. One can be upset, but the question is that how would you react to such circumstances? I will give you an example. You should search for and read about Mother Hladini, who was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and she was serving in New Vrindavan back in the 70s. And during the time when she was serving, there practically wasn't anybody. Can everybody go on mute, please? During the time when she was in New Vrindavan, there was nobody to assist her. And she used to practically be engaging in the service of the deities throughout the day. So the point that you're trying to make here is that this was someone who used to wake up at 2 o'clock, will not even have time to chant, because they would be doing all the services right till the end, till the night 10 o'clock, 11. Yeah? They would somehow or the other be able to chant by hanging the chanting beads in front of them, counting the chanting beads while also cutting vegetables and doing this. She had great control over her faculties and senses. She would keep all kinds of shastra open in different temple, in the spots in the temple. When Jagannath was being offered some kind of bhoga, she will go to the side and read 1 or 2 pages of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. When the milk is boiling, she would read 1 or 2 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. So this is how she used to manage. The point I'm trying to make is, it is not so much a matter of becoming less enthusiastic. In fact, that wouldn't happen. Yeah. If you don't have basically cooperation from different devotees, the ability to perform austerities and to be able to do more with less, that basically comes as we go higher and higher in consciousness. So that is just an example. I was just giving you an example, but we must read about her because she was a great personality. Very great personality. Very advanced soul. Okay, so I'm taking one question, which is from Partha. Let me see. Well, I think I'll answer the question a little later to Parthasarthi Prabhu. I can leave a message for you.
Okay.
All right. I think that was pretty much it. And I really thank everyone for joining me. We'll join again next week. We will continue with our discussion of the 4th chapter. We'll conclude the 4th chapter in the subsequent week. Hare Krishna.